right, John, this next question comes from Laura. Laura says, dealers are known for running ads at the end of the month. Is it true that many cars from this advertising are technically sold in the beginning of the next month? And if so, doesn't this throw off the accuracy of the cost per vehicle retail figure?
Wow, great question. Over time, it won't, right? Over a period of 6 months, over a period of a year, an annual amount, it's going to even out. But your question is a good one. Remember this, that the reason that the dealers are spending money at the end of a month is because typically the end of a month is when they are selling the most vehicles anyway. It's the hottest time of the month, and so they want to advertise at a time when the customers are prone to be coming in to buy one, right? That's one thing. Another thing is that if there is a dealer cash program where the dealers are earning cash back in their pockets from the manufacturer, those programs typically end at the end of a month. So they're pushing hard to do that. And let me tell you, if they're selling a car on the last day of the month, they're going to do everything they can do to make it fall on the last day of the month. They might do the paperwork a few days later, but they're going to report that vehicle to the manufacturer on the last day of the month. It'll end up on their financial statement on the last day of the month. So yeah, it does skew those numbers a little bit, or it could skew them a little bit, but over time, if you add month after month after month after month together, it'll even out. It'll even itself out as you move forward. You might know, you may or may not, many of you may or may not know this, the best month of the year for automotive sales is the last month of the year, the time between December 25th and New Year's Eve. That time right then is every year since the beginning of time, since Henry Ford made that damn first Model A or Model T, whichever was first. From that time on, the last week of the year is the largest year for automotive. Just keep that in mind. The largest sales time for automotive.
John, this question comes from Dawn, who asks, what % of vehicle transactions are leased?
Don, great question. That number is getting bigger and bigger and bigger every year. Again, that varies from market to market, but it's now, the last time I saw that number, it was now about 40%. 40%. That's a big number. Now, and let me take this a step further. In the luxury brands, Mercedes, BMW, Lexus, that stuff, it's way, way, way higher. Way higher. In Hyundai, for example, Kia, way lower. But the dealers and the manufacturers are trying to do more leasing every day. And that, by the way, is why lease payments can be so much lower than the purchase payment. So you heard me say a little earlier, you can drive that new F-150 for $289 a month. I didn't say buy, I said drive. That's because it's a lease. And so, yeah, you should, when you're talking to a dealer, one of the things you should suggest to them, all of you should suggest, Don, is to let's advertise a lease payment. Let's advertise a lease payment. There are some dealers in South Florida, some BMW, Mercedes, Lexus dealers who advertise lease payments, and in their ad they say, why would you drive a Ford, a Chevy, or a Dodge when you can drive a Lexus for $389 a month? You know, so they're They're trying to compete, not with another Lexus dealer or amongst themselves, Mercedes, BMW, and Lexus. They're trying to compete with a lease payment. They're trying to compete with the Dodge dealer. So, Don, that's a good question. That number, and by the way, what happens is when that lease is getting ready to be turned in, the customer's got to return it to a franchise dealer that he leased it from, not the franchise dealer, but that brand, and that vehicle then becomes a certified pre-owned car. A certified. I was talking to a Ford dealer the other day in Texas who said to me, "Oh my God, the most gold-plated vehicle on our lot is a certified pre-owned pickup truck." Oh my God, a certified pre-owned pickup truck is worth its weight in platinum. So what they're trying to do is lease more pickup trucks. That pickup truck comes back, it's got 40,000 miles on it. It gets a close to, not exactly, but close to a factory warranty, a 0% or maybe a 2.3, 2.9% interest rate. Oh, that thing's running off the lot. Good question, Don. Thank you.
John, next question comes from Randy, who says, how do you handle a dealer who says, contact my ad agency, they handle all of our advertising decisions, and then what do you say to these agencies?
Randy, the greatest. I've said I've had a lot of good questions today. Yeah, what in the hell do you do? What do you do? Especially if the agency is what I like to call a garage agency. It's some Mickey Mouse bunch that opened up an agency in their garage and they think they know the automobile business, right? Wrong. Sure. Ad agencies are the bane to our existence. They're terrible. The answer to that is you need to go to the agency with some creative ideas that revolve around price selection and that unique selling proposition. Go to the agency and say, hey, this is a no-fail way that I can help you, Mr. Ad Agency, drive down the dealer's cost per vehicle retail. I have actually called on agencies with some broadcast account executives and given them a whole series of ideas, creative ideas. And then I look them in the eye and say, now, if you agree with any of these ideas, you better remember who brought me over here. It was WXYZ, this guy right here, Randy, this guy right here brought me. If you take these ideas and you use them with your dealer and you do not place any advertising with this guy, I'm going to come back here and haunt you. I'm going to come back here with a Mexican cartel hitman. No, I'm joking. But Randy, I know that that might not be a good answer to that, but it's all you can do. Advertising agencies are the bane to our existence because they think they know what they're doing, but they really, really, really don't in many cases. If you got an ad agency out there who's got a client and they're advertising, come on down, we're family owned and operated, we've been here for all these years, we're your neighbors, please come and see us and we're going to give you a really great price on a vehicle, but they never say the price. You need to go to that ad agency and say, hey buddy, the dealer's not in the room with us right now, let me explain this to you. And show them some of these, when I talked about elements of a compelling automotive creative, price selection, unique selling proposition, and a prominent and easy internet locator, these are not my ideas. These I developed this by talking to hundreds and hundreds of dealers around the country and discovered that the people that have these in their broadcast advertising are the people with the lowest cost per vehicle retail. And the people that are spending money on this stuff have the highest cost per vehicle retail, or billboards, or bus benches, or the advertising on transit buses, right? Who the hell is writing down the phone number that's on the back of the transit bus, right? Nobody. I only know of one transit bus advertisement that I thought worked. And it was out in California, and it was on the side of a bus, and it said, this is years ago now, Hyundai's, $89 a month, cheaper than riding the bus. But other than that, And so what you got to do is talk to them about this and try to make sure that you are helping the advertising agency help the dealer. And by the way, if the advertising agency throws you out, go back to the dealer. Tell them they threw you out. Tell them that they're not doing the right job. What do you got to lose? They're not doing any business with you anyway. Keep that in mind.
John, I got two questions, very similar questions from both Teresa and David. And they both ask, I have a good dealer client who says he's being pressured away from local broadcast by the manufacturers. He says they're doing this by cutting co-op funds. Is that true?
That could very well be true, but I know of no, Teresa, David, I know of no dealer that relies on just co-op. Somebody asked me earlier about that $400 per vehicle. What did it include? It does not include co-op. Typically, dealers use co-op money to produce those flyers and those postcards that they send to their clients for their service department. Very few successful dealers use co-op money for all of, or in some cases, even part of their new vehicle and used vehicle advertising. Co-op money, by the way, is normally never used at all for used vehicle advertising. And I don't know that that is absolutely true. Here again, you can't say to the dealer, BS, they're not cutting your co-op. You're just using that as an no. What you got to consistently do is talk about cost per vehicle retail, talk about market share, talk about the other people in the marketplace, and just let that co-op stuff go in one ear and out the other, and try your if he's using a reduction in co-op money to reduce the amount of money they spend with you, you've got to just focus in on the value that you bring to that dealer. Don't give up on them. Keep fighting that battle. I have not heard, and by the way, I talk to hundreds and hundreds of dealers all the time. I have not heard of anybody being cut co-op. It's pretty much insignificant for the dealers that are really aggressive. That Arrigo Dodge down here, JM Lexus, those people, I've never even heard them talk about co-op. So again, I know, yeah, it is, no, it isn't, yeah, it is, no, it isn't, yeah, it is, no, it isn't. Yeah, that's always an issue, and sometimes there isn't a good answer for it, but let's focus on cost per vehicle retail. What is your cost per vehicle retail? Where do you stand today? Let's keep measuring this on a monthly basis as best we can, and let me show you how I can continue to drive down your cost per vehicle retail and do it with compelling price selection creative.
John, this question comes from Peter, and Peter asks this: other than the Purple Monkey, what other services and products are wasting dealers' marketing budget? And as broadcast sellers, can we go after dealer budgets if their strategy is oversaturated with these other things like Cars.com, AutoTrader, etc.?
Peter, absolutely. And thank you for asking that question. Okay. Here's a couple of places that you have to attack. One is outdoor. You've got a dealer that is putting a bunch of money in outdoor advertising. You need to attack that. Let me give you an example. I was in Atlanta, Georgia, talking with a guy that just built a brand new Chevrolet store. And he had this beautiful glass facade. The front of this store was 3 stories tall, had this monster, beautiful glass facade in the front, and this monster bunch of vehicles parked out front. And off to one side of his property was a monster 40-foot billboard. And it had in huge red letters, "The best deals in town are right," and then a great big arrow pointing into the building. That was it. That was it. And we're standing out on the lot, and he says, "What do you think of my billboard?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. Is that billboard on your property?" He said, "No, it's on the property next door. I rent it for $4,000 a month." I looked at the billboard and I looked over at this huge glass facade and I said, "Well, if I was you, I'd go get a great big canvas tarp and I'd hang it down over that glass in the front of this building and I'd say, 'The best deals in town are right here,' and have an arrow pointing straight down." He looked up at the billboard. He looked over at his building. He looked at me. And I said, "Did I just save you $4,000 a month?" He said, "Yep, you sure did." I said, "Well, what you need to do with that $4,000 is buy some radio or television advertising with it." And there are dealers all over the country who have these billboards that, what are they doing? What are they doing with them? If a dealer tells you it's there to get my name out in front of the public, say to them, "Can you tell me how many vehicles you've sold with that billboard?" They can't tell you. Now, you're backing them into a corner, but hey, they can't tell you. The only billboard that makes any sense, the only one that makes any sense, is the directional billboard. XYZ Toyota, get off at the next exit, take a left. You know, that kind of thing. That's the only one that might have some effect. So attack billboards. Attack anybody that's advertising on the side of a bus. Attack anybody who's advertising on a bus bench. No. Direct mail. Anybody that's using direct mail is probably wasting their money. And again, what you got to do is ask those people, "Hey, what is your cost per vehicle retail? What do you spend? What does your budget look like?" And if when you go home at night, you look in your mailbox and you got a piece of direct mail from the local dealer that says something about, "We want to buy your used car," typically that stuff is unbelievably ineffective. Now, you might ask the question, why do dealers do that? Well, if the dealer has a general manager or general sales manager or somebody else who's making those decisions, there is a chance that there's a little payoff under the table. Now, you can't accuse anybody of this, but this actually happened to me many years ago when I was the general manager of a big store in Miami, Florida. And I had a direct mail guy come to me and say, I want to sell you 10,000 pieces of mail. This is going to be the best mail piece you've ever seen in your life, and it's going to cost you $10,000 or $12,000. I said, really? What's the difference in the 10 and 12,000? The guy looks over his shoulder, looks back at me, and says, the 2,000 that I'm going to pay you under the table. Now, you can't, of course, I threw him out of the place. You can't say that to somebody, but what you can do is talk to them about cost per vehicle retail. And I will promise you, if they're spending money on the Purple Gorillas, on direct mail, on outdoor advertising, bus benches, buses, any of that stuff, banners on the high school football stadium fence, you know, that kind of stuff. How about advertising where you get some local sports person to be your local celebrity to be your spokesperson? In Denver, Colorado, I believe it, Denver, Colorado, a bunch of the dealers in Denver hired John Elway. John Elway had a bunch of dealerships, and he was the spokesman and became the spokesman for AutoNation in that area. The year that he became the spokesman, AutoNation lost 2 percentage points of market share. And the question always is, am I going to pay $40,000 for a car and the price isn't really that great, but I'm doing it because John Elway said I oughta? No. When the guy across town is advertising one way lower than John Elway is talking about, boom. So all of those things, celebrity endorsements, pound away at them. Let me help you drive down your cost per vehicle retail. And you got to question the effectiveness of some of this stuff. Again, the Purple Gorilla is the perfect one. Mr. Dealer, can you really tell me how many vehicles you sell with that Gorilla? No. Well, I'm going to advertise a compelling price, a compelling selection message on this ad. This is going to be some great creative. And at the bottom of the ad, I'm going to put your website. And you're going to be able to measure how many people inquire on your website. And we're going to have a precise measurement on how effective my advertising can be. There we go.
John, this question comes from Florian, and Florian asks this. We are a local talk station competing with larger groups. Dealers in our market already advertise with our competitors. How can we convince them to use us also?
Florian, I can't sell your radio station, but I can tell you that what you've got to sell is frequency instead of reach. You got a great big gun radio station in your town that goes to the dealer and says, I'm talking to 300,000 sets of ears, right? Well, I don't know how many listeners that 100,000 watt AM station in Nebraska has, the one that I showed you the map of, huh? I don't know how big this station is, this guy right here, but I know that that little dealer in that little town in the middle of Nebraska owns that station. He's on that station every minute of the day. When the local farm report comes out on that AM radio station in the morning, it's brought to you by that dealer. And so I think the only thing you can do there is, hey, you can buy 18 gazillion ads on my radio station versus a much smaller number on the big gun station and be way more effective. But again, remember this, Florian, the message must be compelling. It must be something that drives the customer to that dealer's showroom or to that dealer's website. And remember, you gotta say the dealer's website at least 3 times. You gotta repeat it 3 times in every radio ad. XYZToyota.com. XYZToyota.com. That's at JMLexus.com. You gotta say it 3 times in every ad. But the frequency thing is I think all you can do. And I can tell you that is a question that we've had a lot, and I know that the folks at LBS have talked about that many times. I'm sure that there's all kinds of resources on LBS that talk about that exact issue.
Yeah, exactly right, John. Florian, if we can help you find that, just shoot us an email. We'll be happy to do it. John, next question comes from James. James says, everything you're sharing makes total sense. Unfortunately, some owners and managers pride themselves on behaving like jerks. How do we react after an irrational outburst?
Absolutely. I am going to do a very important seminar soon about how do I get an appointment with the decision maker? How do I get an appointment with the decision maker? And along with that is, how do I deal with that A personality auto dealer who's simply roughing me up a little bit? The answer to that question is, well, there's a whole bunch of different answers. One of them is, tell them to stick it and go find yourself another prospect. You can't be the only dealer in town. The second is, shift them right back to, you know what? I have helped so many other businesses drive down their cost per vehicle retail or their marketing and advertising costs versus revenue. You know, it doesn't have to be a dealer. You can give examples of other than dealers. Furniture sellers. You can lawyers, doctors, dentists, whoever. There's a measure out there of how much they're spending on marketing and advertising versus how much revenue they're bringing in. And what is that percentage? Then there's cost per vehicle retail. You know, use an example. You know, I have taken the local furniture dealer, and his marketing and advertising costs as a percent of revenue has dropped 22%. I can't imagine why you wouldn't allow me to help you do the same thing. Yeah, I'm sorry that you've had that experience. They're not all that nasty. There are some true gentlemen out there. But how do you get an appointment with the decision maker? How do you get in front of the decision maker? How do you get the decision maker to listen to you? And the answer to that is they have to want to listen to you. And the way you get them to want to listen to you is not to walk in there and say, I want to sell you some time on my radio or television station. No, The way to get them to listen to you is, I want to help you drive down your marketing and advertising costs per vehicle retail. And I have a formula to help you do that. And I can prove it. Now, you got to be able to prove it, but that's the way you at least diffuse some of that. Sure, that's not a, that's a good question, but not an, there's not a really good easy answer to somebody who's just not a gentleman. Yeah.
John, this question comes from Lance. Lance says, I've been working on trying to get a big Mazda dealership, but have had little luck. They currently do a little radio and digital from the corporate side, and I know they have gotten the inventory back and their service is second to none. Any thoughts on Mazda and how to approach this dealership?
Same as all the others, Lance. Same as all the others. You know, there's now, you know, they've got a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, the different models of Mazdas. The best way to approach that is with the lowest ranking model at a very, very, very effective price point. That price point should more than likely be a payment. And also, I want to say this to you, Lance. And so you need to go at them with, I know some television people don't like to do this with, you know, an example of creative. But I also know that there are some radio folks that love to do examples of creative. So the creative you got to talk about here is selection, selection, selection. And by the way, I know this about Mazda dealers around. They have done very nicely lately. They do have a lot of inventory, and they do have some really, really nice pieces out there and at some good pricing. So what I would do is I would take some of their lower price models, payment them, get a payment on those, and go at that, and probably go to that dealer with some very aggressive creative. If you can get your management to put together some creative examples, that would be a very, very good thing. Dealers love that. If you can put together some creative examples, whether the dealer has an ad agency or not, put together some creative examples and go to them with those. That's real important stuff. And remember the 4 elements of a creative ad, and make sure that you talk about their web address. It's going to, Mr. Dealer, we're going to talk about this web address over and over and over again. We're going to talk about it 3 times in a radio ad. We're going to have it in a letterbox at the bottom of the screen on a TV ad. Here's an example, all the time. Remember that a person coming to a dealer's website and inquiring about a vehicle is as important as somebody walking through the showroom doors in today's world. Critically important. So, yeah, that's the way I'd approach the Mazda. And by the way, one other thing, you can talk about service, and if they've got some of the greatest service that's ever been, you can talk about that, but you cannot talk about that alone. Do not talk about that without a price selection message. You can talk about these guys have a 5-star. Your unique selling proposition in that ad could be these dealers. This is a 5-star service dealer. This is the top dog in service. This is like going to the Ritz-Carlton of service departments. You can do that, but not alone. And the reason for that is that today people are not going to buy a vehicle. I don't care what it is, a Mercedes or a Hyundai or a Mazda, based on only service. They are going to expect good service no matter what. They're going to expect that they're going to get good service. So you telling them you're going to give them good service doesn't really matter. They are already going to expect that. especially the Mercedes guy, right? I've had Mercedes dealers do that. Mercedes services, this is the greatest service department. Your Mercedes will be handled with kid gloves. We're gonna wash and wax your Mercedes. Of course, everybody that buys a Mercedes thinks that anyway. So you can certainly say that, but don't say it alone. Say it, and by the way, not only are you going to be able to drive this Mazda 3 for $189 a month, but we also have the greatest service department in the history of Mazda. Something like that. Go get them, Lance. You can do that.
John, this question comes from Tim. Tim says, we have a great creative team, and a local dealer gives us only a token buy in order to use our spot on all the other bigger stations. Our creative is being used to increase our competitors' share. What can we do?
Yeah, wow. What a rat that dealer is. Go find some other cut this guy off and go find some other dealers that'll spend more money with you. That's terrible. Terrible. I don't know what you do about that. That's a really great question. I'm sorry that I don't have a real good answer for you. This guy's just that's pretty rotten. He's taking your creative, you're developing the ads for him, and he's spending them somewhere else, and you know that they're spending more money with the other stations versus you. I'd try to go find myself a competitor of his. Whatever his franchise is, go to the next town over and see if you can't get that guy to advertise with you and cut this guy off. That would be the best thing. Tell him to go find his own creative, and you take your creative, your dynamite creative, and take it to the same franchise in the next town over and try picking his pocket. There's not a good answer to that question other than something like that. Other than not letting them do that. Always remember, everyone. Always remember, broadcasters. The dealer is competing with other makes in his marketplace and also other dealers of the same make around him. And again, if you want to talk about how that works, go to LBS and look me up and look up the segment I do about pump in, pump out dealer. Pump in, pump out dealers. That's a real important place.
John, this question comes from Carrie. Carrie says, we used to work with a local dealer to provide a car of the week that the morning guy would pick up on Friday and keep over the weekend. He would then bring it back on Monday and do a live spot talking about the car and how much he loved it. Do you like that? Do you have any more ideas like it?
No, I don't like that. Why? Because everybody in the world knows, hey, JM Lexus, let me use this Lexus whatever over the weekend. And I'm bringing it back to him now, and everybody knows that he's getting paid, and he's not going to say, wow, this car really sucks. This is terrible. It got lousy gas mileage, and it rattled, and no. Now, with that said, the only way I would do that is if that morning celebrity brought the car back and said, I drove this car over the weekend, and I could not believe that I could drive this car forever for $189 a month. You got to come down here to XYZ Motors and see this. This vehicle is $189 a month. Now, I'm going to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Jones here, the dealer, let me drive this vehicle over the weekend so that I could tell you how nice it is. And it is really nice. But you got to come down here to Jones Ford because you can drive this not for free, but almost free, $189 a month. So this is a really nice car. But you know the nicest part about it? $189 a month. You know, that's just about $6 a day. All you got to do is cut out 1 6-pack, a couple of beers, and you paid for this. That's the way I would do that. Oh, and by the way, he let me drive this one. He's got 30 of them parked out here. $189 a month. I drove it for free, but you could drive it for almost free. That's the only way I'd do that. Driving the car for the weekend, bringing it back and saying, hey, this is a really great car, you know. This is your morning disc jockey, and this is a great car. That's not getting me over there to do it. But again, ladies and gentlemen, compelling. What is the compelling way? The way that customers that are in the market, all those people driving around in those 16-year-old cars and trucks, getting them to come to the dealership or come to the website and inquire about a vehicle. What do you do? How do you do it? And you do it when that customer hears or hears this radio guy say that, and then say, come and check it out at $189 a month. I didn't believe it. You know, I drove this car over the weekend, and it was only this morning that Mr. Jones here at Jones Ford told me that I could drive that car for the next 4 years for $189 a month. I said, oh, come on. No way. You got to come down here and see this. And he's got 30 of them. Bingo. That's the way you do that.
John, this question comes from Adrian. Adrian says, it's possible that a dealer might lie about the results they get from advertising with us. Is it a good idea to track results by driving people to our station's website and then to the client? I'm thinking it might also help the AE follow up with the client about those leads that came in through our station.
Adrian, absolutely. Again, there is something that I've got on another piece at LBS. Adrian, without a doubt. Now listen, there's a couple ways to do this. But yes, if you can drive them, if you can get your technical people to get inquiries coming to you, let me take a step back here. Auto Trader, the Auto Trader people that used to produce a big book, a flyer with all these vehicles in it, used vehicles and some new vehicles in Auto Trader. They were the guys that invented this. What they did is they put phone numbers in. Every vehicle had a phone number, a picture of a vehicle, a price, blah, 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 and a phone number. That phone number was a phone number set up by, it was a dummy phone number set up by Auto Trader that routed through the Auto Trader system and then to the dealership. It rang at the dealership, right, in the used car department. The phone rang, but it was routed through the Auto Trader system. And what was Auto Trader doing? They were counting the number of phone calls. I used to spend a lot of money when I was a dealer on Auto Trader. Auto Trader had a rep that would come once a week and would come to me and say, Mr. Tack, here's how many phone calls we sent to you. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of phone calls. Now, I don't know what you did with them, but you need to know this is how many came in. I would, of course, take that data, walk across the lot to the used car department, grab the used car manager and say, hey, buddy, how many cars did we sell out of these 200 phone calls? He better have an answer for me. So yes, if there's a way you can measure that way, that's wonderful. Also, simply ask and here again, you got to ask the dealer this, ask the dealer, how many inquiries did he get to his website? Remember what an inquiry is. It's not how many hits he got, it's how many inquiries he got. An inquiry is where a customer inquired about a specific vehicle or a specific model and then gave the dealer a path back to the customer, either a telephone number or a web address or an email address, right? So the inquiries are what you want to focus on. But just how many people came to the website is absolutely valuable information. Valuable. But what you really want is, again, this compelling piece of advertising that drives customers to the dealer's website, and if the dealer has a website and a manager of that website and people that are selling off of the website, you need to go to them and ask them how many inquiries are they getting on a weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, whatever data you can pull. And there are some dealers that might lie about that a little bit, but not very much. But yes, if there's a way you can drive people to your station's website or to a website that routes them through to the dealer, that's a wonderful idea. And there are a lot of people around the country that are doing things like that that you can use to do that.